The power of silence. What if one of the greatest forms of power you could develop is something you already possess? Not money, not physical strength, not influence, not intelligence. Silence. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the ability to remain silent has become rare. Everyone wants to respond. Everyone wants to explain themselves. Everyone wants to prove that they are right. Everyone wants the last word. But what if you stopped? What if, instead of reacting, you paused? What if, instead of explaining every decision, you simply kept moving? What if, instead of telling everyone your plans, you worked quietly until the results became impossible to ignore? Because silence is not always weakness. Sometimes silence is discipline. Sometimes silence is confidence. Sometimes silence is emotional control. Sometimes silence is protection. And sometimes silence is the most powerful answer you can give. Think about the last time someone said something that made you angry. Maybe someone insulted you. Maybe someone misunderstood you. Maybe someone criticized your dreams. Maybe someone tried to provoke you. Your first instinct was probably to respond, to defend yourself, to explain, to prove them wrong. But here's the question. What if you didn't? What if you simply looked at the situation, took a breath, and chose not to give it your energy? Imagine the power of being able to control your reaction when everyone expects you to lose control. Imagine being able to walk away from an argument without feeling like you lost. Imagine having the confidence to keep your plans private until they become reality. Imagine being comfortable enough with yourself that you don't need to constantly explain who you are. That is the power of silence. And throughout this journey, you are going to discover that silence is much more than simply not talking. Silence can help you master your emotions. It can protect your energy. It can reveal people's true character. It can sharpen your thinking. It can strengthen your confidence. It can protect your goals. And it can teach you something most people never learn. You don't have to react to everything that happens to you. There will be moments in your life when people will try to pull you into unnecessary arguments. There will be moments when your emotions will tell you to speak. There will be moments when your ego will demand that you prove yourself. And there will be moments when the smartest thing you can do is absolutely nothing. Pause. Observe. Think. Then decide. Because the strongest person isn't always the person who speaks the loudest. Sometimes, the strongest person is the one who remains calm when everyone else is losing control. So, as you listen to this message, don't just hear the words. Think about your own life. Think about the arguments you didn't need to have. The things you revealed that should have remained private. The people you tried too hard to impress. The moments when you reacted emotionally and later wished you had remained silent. And ask yourself, what could change in my life if I learned to control my silence? Stay with me until the end, because the final lesson may completely change the way you respond to people, pressure, criticism, and conflict. Today, you are going to learn how to become quieter without becoming weaker, calmer without becoming passive, and more powerful without needing to prove your power. Because sometimes, the less you say, the more people notice. Sometimes, the quieter you become, the clearer you think. And sometimes, your silence can say what words never could. Welcome to the power of silence. Master your mind. Transform your life. The power of silence. Chapter 1. Silence is a form of power. Imagine you are sitting in a room with 10 people. Someone insults you. Everyone looks at you. They expect you to respond. They expect anger. They expect an argument. But instead, you remain silent. You look at them calmly and say nothing. At first, they may think you are weak. They may think you have nothing to say. But something interesting begins to happen. The person who tried to provoke you becomes uncomfortable. Why? Because they cannot control your reaction. And that is where the power of silence begins. Most people believe power means speaking louder. They believe power means having the final word. They believe power means proving that they are right. But sometimes, the strongest person in the room is the one who does not need to speak. Silence is not always weakness. Sometimes silence is discipline. Sometimes silence is confidence. Sometimes silence is wisdom. And sometimes silence is the ultimate response. Think about how many mistakes people make because they speak too quickly. They reveal their plans too early. They tell people their weaknesses. They respond emotionally. They explain themselves to people who were never interested in understanding them. They argue with people who only wanted to provoke them. They speak because they are uncomfortable with silence. But a disciplined person learns something different. You don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to prove everything. And you don't have to win every argument. There is incredible strength in being able to sit with silence. Imagine a young man named Daniel. Daniel was ambitious. He wanted to build a successful business. Whenever he had a new idea, he told everyone. He told his friends. He told relatives. He told people at work. He talked about what he was going to build, how much money he would make, and how successful he would become. But months passed. Nothing happened. Then Daniel met an older businessman who had built several successful companies. Daniel told him about his newest idea. The businessman listened quietly. When Daniel finished speaking, the man asked only one question. "Have you started?" Daniel became quiet. "No," he answered. The businessman smiled and said, "Then stop talking about it." That sentence changed Daniel's life. He stopped announcing his plans. He stopped seeking approval. He stopped telling everyone what he was going to do. Instead, he worked quietly. Every morning. Every evening. Week after week. Month after month. Eventually, people began noticing results. The same people who once heard Daniel talk about his dreams were now seeing the evidence of his work. And Daniel learned one of the most important lessons of his life. Your results do not need an announcement. Let your actions introduce you. Let your discipline speak for you. Let your success make the noise. Because when you constantly talk about what you are going to do, you release some of the psychological satisfaction before you actually accomplish it. But when you remain silent, you preserve your energy. You preserve your focus. You preserve your mystery. And most importantly, you preserve your opportunity to work without unnecessary opinions surrounding you. Not everyone needs to know your next move. Not everyone deserves access to your plans. Not everyone needs an explanation. Sometimes you need to disappear from the noise so you can hear your own thoughts. And this is only the beginning. Because silence does something even more powerful than protecting your plans. It can completely change the way you think. And in the next chapter, you will discover why silence can become one of the greatest tools for mastering your mind. Chapter 2: Silence helps you master your mind. Your mind is constantly talking. Even when your mouth is closed, your mind may be running at full speed. What if I fail? What will they think? Should I respond? Why did they say that? What if something goes wrong? What should I do next? The modern world rarely gives your mind permission to become quiet. There is always something demanding your attention. Messages, notifications, videos, music, arguments, news, social media, other people's opinions. And eventually, you can become so surrounded by external noise that you forget what your own thoughts sound like. Silence creates space. And inside that space, you begin to observe yourself. You start noticing your emotions instead of immediately obeying them. You notice your anger. You notice your fear. You notice your insecurity. You notice your desires. And when you can observe something without immediately reacting to it, you gain power over it. Imagine someone sends you an insulting message. Your first instinct is to respond immediately. You type. You delete. You type again. Your heart begins beating faster. You want them to understand how wrong they are. But then you stop. You put the phone down. You wait. An hour passes. You read the message again. Suddenly, it doesn't feel as powerful. Why? Because emotion is temporary. But words can become permanent. A 5-second emotional reaction can create a 5-year problem. Silence gives emotion time to pass. This is why one of the greatest forms of self-control is learning to pause before responding. You don't need to answer immediately. You don't need to react immediately. You don't need to make decisions while angry. You don't need to send the message while emotional. Pause. Breathe. Think. Then decide. That small space between emotion and action can completely change your life. A powerful person is not someone who never feels anger. A powerful person is someone who feels anger but doesn't allow anger to control their behavior. Silence gives you that space. It gives you time to ask, is this worth my energy? Will responding improve the situation? Am I speaking because I have something valuable to say, or because my ego wants to be heard? Those questions can save you from countless mistakes. And once you learn to control your reactions, something extraordinary happens. People begin to realize they cannot easily manipulate you. They cannot push your buttons whenever they want. They cannot make you angry simply because they are angry. You become emotionally independent. You become calmer. You become harder to control. And that brings us to the next chapter. Because silence doesn't only help you control yourself, it also helps you understand other people. Chapter 3: Silence Reveals People. One of the most powerful things about silence is what happens when you stop filling every empty space with words. People begin revealing themselves. When you constantly talk, you may miss what others are saying. But when you become quiet, you start observing. You notice patterns. You notice contradictions. You notice body language. You notice who listens. You notice who interrupts. You notice who respects you. You notice who only contacts you when they need something. Silence turns you from a participant into an observer. Imagine entering a new environment. Instead of immediately trying to impress everyone, you listen. You watch. One person constantly talks about themselves. Another person talks badly about everyone. Another person barely speaks but pays attention to everything. Another person changes personality depending on who is in the room. You begin learning. You don't need to interrogate anyone. People reveal themselves naturally when you give them enough space. This is especially important when choosing friends, partners, business associates, and people you trust. Sometimes, the fastest way to understand someone is not to ask more questions. It's to stop talking and listen. Give them room. Let them explain themselves. Let them tell their stories. Let them reveal their priorities. Because people often tell you who they are. The problem is that we are sometimes too busy talking to listen. A wise person doesn't only listen to words. They listen to patterns. They observe actions. They compare promises with behavior. They pay attention to what happens when someone is angry, disappointed, successful, or challenged. Silence gives you the opportunity to observe all of this. And once you become a better observer, you become harder to deceive. But there is another hidden advantage to silence. It can make your words more valuable. And that is what we will explore next. Chapter 4: When you speak less, your words can mean more. Imagine two people. The first person talks constantly. They give opinions about everything. They comment on every situation. They tell jokes constantly. They explain themselves constantly. Eventually, people become used to hearing them. Their words become background noise. Now imagine someone who rarely speaks. They listen. They observe. They think. And when they finally speak, everyone pays attention. Why? Because scarcity creates value. If you speak every second, your words can lose their impact. But if you speak intentionally, people begin listening carefully. This doesn't mean you should become antisocial. It doesn't mean you should stop communicating. It means you should stop wasting words. Speak when your words have purpose. Speak when your words can help. Speak when silence would cause harm. Speak when truth needs to be defended. But don't speak simply because you are uncomfortable with silence. Before you speak, ask yourself, does this need to be said? Is this the right time? Am I helping or simply reacting? Will I regret saying this later? These questions can transform communication. Your goal is not to become someone who says nothing. Your goal is to become someone whose words have weight. Because the power of silence is not that you never speak. The power is that you control when you do. And that control becomes especially powerful when people try to provoke you. Chapter 5. Silence can protect you from provocation. Some people don't want an honest conversation. They want a reaction. They know exactly what to say to make you angry. They criticize you. They insult you. They question your intelligence. They bring up your failures. They attack your character. And then they wait. They want you to explode. Because once you lose emotional control, they have gained control of the situation. This is why silence can be a shield. Not every attack deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves an explanation. Not every person deserves access to your emotions. Imagine someone says, "You will never succeed." You could spend 30 minutes trying to convince them that they are wrong. Or you could smile and continue working. Years later, your results may answer the question for you. This is one of the most beautiful forms of silence. Letting your life respond for you. You don't have to convince everyone that you are capable. You don't have to prove yourself to every critic. You don't have to argue with every person who misunderstands you. Keep moving. Keep learning. Keep improving. Keep building. There is a time to defend yourself. There is a time to speak against injustice. There is a time to establish boundaries. But there is also a time to walk away. Wisdom is knowing the difference. And once you master that difference, you will discover another benefit of silence. It protects your energy. Chapter 6. Silence protects your energy. Your attention is one of your most valuable resources. Every argument consumes attention. Every unnecessary conversation consumes attention. Every piece of gossip consumes attention. Every pointless debate consumes attention. And attention is energy. If you spend your entire day reacting to other people, you may have nothing left for your own goals. Think about a person trying to build a better life. They wake up with goals. But before they begin, they check social media. They see an argument. They join it. Then they see another opinion. They respond. Someone sends them an angry message. They spend an hour arguing. By evening, they are exhausted. But they haven't moved their own life forward. Silence can break that cycle. You begin asking, "Does this deserve my attention?" If the answer is no, you let it go. You don't have to attend every argument you are invited to. You don't have to respond to every notification. You don't have to know everyone's opinion. You don't have to explain your life to everyone. Protect your mental space. Protect your focus. Protect your peace. Because the more carefully you protect your energy, the more energy you have available for the things that actually matter. And this leads to a deeper lesson. Sometimes silence isn't about other people at all. Sometimes silence is about finally meeting yourself. Chapter 7. Silence helps you hear yourself. When was the last time you sat alone without your phone? No music. No video. No conversation. No notifications. Just you. For many people, that experience is uncomfortable. Because when the external noise disappears, internal noise becomes louder. You start thinking about your life, your choices, your regrets, your dreams, your fears, your future. And this is exactly why many people avoid silence. They don't fear silence. They fear what silence might reveal. But growth requires honesty. Sometimes you need to sit quietly and ask yourself, am I living the life I actually want? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What am I avoiding? What needs to change? Who am I becoming? These questions are powerful, and you won't always find the answers immediately. But silence gives you the space to search. Many great ideas are born in quiet moments. Many important decisions are made after reflection. Many people discover their purpose when they finally stop listening to everyone else. You don't need another person's opinion every time you make a decision. Learn to think. Learn to reflect. Learn to trust yourself. Because if you are constantly asking everyone else what you should do, you may eventually lose the ability to hear your own judgment. Silence strengthens that ability. And when you become comfortable with yourself, you no longer need constant external validation. That brings us to one of the most powerful forms of silence of all: knowing when to walk away. Chapter 8. Silence knows when to walk away. There are situations where the most powerful response is not an argument. It is departure. You don't need to stay in every environment. You don't need to convince everyone to understand you. You don't need to fight for acceptance from people who have already decided to misunderstand you. Sometimes your silence says, "I refuse to participate. I refuse to become like you. I refuse to destroy my peace. I am moving forward." Walking away doesn't always mean you are defeated. Sometimes it means you finally understand your value. Imagine someone repeatedly disrespects you. You explain. They continue. You explain again. They continue. At some point, more words will not create more understanding. Your next step may need to be action. Distance. Boundaries. Silence. You don't always need the final conversation. You don't always need closure from another person. Sometimes closure comes from deciding that you are finished. Your peace is valuable. Don't trade it for the satisfaction of winning an argument. Because there is something even more important than proving someone wrong: building yourself into someone who no longer needs their approval. And that takes us to Chapter 9. Because once you become comfortable with silence, you can use it to build something most people desperately want: inner confidence. Chapter 9. Silence builds inner confidence. A person who is comfortable with silence doesn't need constant validation. They can walk into a room without demanding attention. They can make a decision without announcing it. They can work without applause. They can fail without making excuses. They can succeed without bragging. Why? Because their confidence comes from within. External validation is addictive. You post something and wait for likes. You accomplish something and wait for praise. You make a decision and wait for approval. But imagine living differently. Imagine knowing who you are even when nobody is watching. Imagine working hard even when nobody applauds. Imagine improving yourself even when nobody notices. That is inner strength. And silence helps build it. There is a particular kind of confidence that develops when you stop explaining yourself. You realize, I know what I am doing. I know why I am doing it. I don't need everyone to understand. That doesn't mean you ignore constructive criticism. It means you stop allowing random opinions to determine your identity. You become grounded. You become patient. You become deliberate. And eventually your silence becomes different. It is no longer silence because you are afraid to speak. It is silence because you have learned that not everything deserves your voice. That is maturity. And now we arrive at the final chapter. Because the ultimate power of silence is not simply knowing when to remain quiet. It is knowing when silence should become action. Chapter 10. Master the power of silence. Silence is powerful. But silence alone will not change your life. You must use it intentionally. Be silent when anger wants you to react. Be silent when gossip wants your participation. Be silent when people demand unnecessary explanations. Be silent when your plans need protection. Be silent when you need time to think. Be silent when you are learning about someone. Be silent when your emotions are controlling your judgment. But speak when your values require it. Speak when someone needs encouragement. Speak when truth needs to be defended. Speak when boundaries need to be established. Speak when love needs to be expressed. Speak when your knowledge can help someone. The goal is not to become silent all the time. The goal is to become intentional. There is a difference between silence caused by fear and silence caused by wisdom. Fear says, "Don't speak because you are scared." Wisdom says, "Don't speak because this moment doesn't deserve your energy." Fear hides. Wisdom observes. Fear avoids. Wisdom chooses. Fear is controlled by circumstances. Wisdom controls its response to circumstances. So from today, practice the pause. Before responding, pause. Before arguing, pause. Before revealing your plans, pause. Before making an emotional decision, pause. Before explaining yourself, pause. Ask, is my response necessary? Is this worth my energy? Will speaking improve this situation? If I remain silent, what can I learn? You may discover that silence gives you something the world cannot give you. Clarity, peace, focus, self-control, and strength. Remember this. You don't need to have the loudest voice to have the greatest impact. You don't need to win every argument to win in life. You don't need to announce every move. You don't need to prove your worth. Sometimes, you simply need to become quiet enough to hear yourself. Quiet enough to think. Quiet enough to observe. Quiet enough to plan. Quiet enough to grow. And then, when the time is right, let your actions speak. Let your discipline speak. Let your character speak. Let your results speak. Let the person you become speak louder than. Let the person you become speak louder than anything you could ever say. Because the world is full of noise. People are constantly talking, constantly reacting, constantly explaining, constantly seeking attention. But the person who can remain calm in the middle of the noise possesses something rare: control. And perhaps that is the real power of silence. Not that you have nothing to say, but that you have developed enough wisdom to know when saying nothing is more powerful. So protect your silence. Use it to think. Use it to grow. Use it to observe. Use it to control your emotions. Use it to protect your energy. And when you finally speak, make your words count. Master your silence. Master your mind. And you will begin to master your life. If this message spoke to you, don't stop here. Take what you learned today and apply it. The next lesson may change the way you see yourself, your relationships, your money, and your future. Master your mind. Transform your life.